Hello and welcome back to the Application Insider channel. Today I'm really excited to share with you a webinar that I actually held for the Dominican Student Nutrition and Dietetic Association. They were holding a series where they were speaking with many dietitians about their path to becoming RDs and what they've done in their career so far, and I was very honored to be included in that series. So I am sharing with you today what I shared with them. It's a lot about my background, my education, my internship experiences that brought me to becoming a dietitian, and then the things I've done in my career thus far, plus a little bit of advice and tips for students who are looking to get a great experience out of their internship and as they move into their career. So this is just a little bit about me, getting to know me a little bit more, and it's my RD story. I'm very excited to share it with you. As Ya said in the introduction, I am based in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was born and raised here in Utah, so I've never lived outside of this state, but I've had a few dietetics opportunities here. So I'm just going to jump into my background and how I got to where I am. So in my schooling, I started out not knowing what I wanted to do, like a lot of college students do. I was at Weber State University, which is in Ogden, Utah, and I didn't decide until I was like in one of my generals classes that I wanted to do something health related, and eventually narrowed that down to nutrition specifically. And when I decided I wanted to become a dietitian, I was just I must have been like halfway through my junior year, and I had two options. Weber State University did not have a nutrition and dietetics major, so I could either transfer to another university that did and get my bachelor's degree in about 3 years from that point, and then be eligible for dietetic internships, or there was also a coordinated program option at that same university that I could transfer to, but it would mean another 3 years to get my undergrad. Or there's a University of Utah that I could go to that had a master's option it was a coordinated program. So I was like, well, in 3 years, I could either have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So I chose to stay at Weber State, finish my bachelor's degree, and what I ended up getting, you can see there, it's called a Bachelor of Integrated Studies, which I think might be pretty unique to Weber State University. Essentially, instead of having a major, I have 3 minors, and I had to group them all together. You can see them listed there. They're nutrition education, health promotion, and chemistry. And by throwing all of those things together, I was able to get the prerequisites for the master's program at the University of Utah. As part of that Bachelor of Integrated Studies, I had to like show how these 3 topics were related. So I did what's called the capstone project, and you could choose your own project. And what I did is I went back to my high school where I had run cross country, and I worked with a cross country team that year to help them learn nutrition. So that's how I brought that all together. Then I moved to the University of Utah to their coordinated master's program in nutrition. They had a sports nutrition emphasis, which I also got to be a part of. And since it's a coordinated program, I did my classes, my schooling, and my internship all rolled up into one program. So like the fall and winter semesters, I was in classes, and then the 2 summer semesters, I was in rotations. And basically my rotations were, here's a sheet with your supervised practice facilities, contact your preceptor, these are the dates you're going there, have fun, see you in the fall when you come back to class. So that was my whole schooling situation. So I did those rotations in the summer semesters. These are not all the rotations that I did, but these are some that I feel like were pretty unique to my experience. Everyone obviously does a clinical rotation. Everyone spends time in community. Everyone spends time in food service. You're going to do all of that when you get to your own internships. But partly because of my sports nutrition emphasis, and partly just because of some of the organizations that are here in Utah, I was able to do these more unique to me rotations. So the first one I have listed there is Diabetes Camp. It's a week-long sleepaway camp for kids who have diabetes, for siblings of kids that have diabetes. There are also lots of campers that had celiac disease. And so while I was there, I was helping prepare food. It was me and another intern in my same class, so we were working together. We also worked with the dietitians and some of the other medical professionals who were there, who were, you know, making sure kids knew, like, this is how we count insulin. Let's, you know, I'll stop playing basketball and let's all check our levels right now. And, you know, just helping them translate that information, helping them learn at meals, you know, looking at the food on their plate. Okay, we all need to know what, if you have diabetes, let's prepare your insulin for this particular meal. What do we have here? So that was some really neat hands-on. I mean, there were cabins. It wasn't the wild, but kind of like in the wild practice, which I thought was pretty unique. Another rotation I did was at the orthopedic specialty hospital. And the dietitian that I worked with, she had been the team dietitian for the US speed skating team. Like, she had a picture of Apollo Antonono in her office, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm like feet away from royalty. This is so amazing. So that was a really unique opportunity. So while I was there, they ran some like food demo classes for the community, but she also did one-on-one consulting with like high-level recreational athletes. I didn't meet any Olympians, unfortunately. It was probably their off season or something. But then, you know, people who were coming in for VO2 max tests and things like that. So I got to see all of that in the works. And then I spent some time at the University of Utah Nutrition Clinic, which was also with high-level recreational athletes, also, you know, collegiate athletes that were on teams at Utah or at the University of Utah. So a lot of that, like I said, went with my sports nutrition emphasis, which you will see in my work history. I have never done anything sports nutrition related since, but I thought those are some unique rotations that I had that hopefully when you guys do your internships, you'll be able to find those things that really match with your interests, or just give you a really unique look at what there is out there in dietetics. So one of the questions that Yas sent me was, how did you kind of decide for the job search what to look for and what your actual interests within dietetics were? So these are some of the questions I know I was asking myself when I was looking for my first job outside of school. Which rotations and classes did I really enjoy and why? Which did I not enjoy? Because you'll see there was something that was like almost very low on the consideration list for me. So that was part of my you know, list of things that were important to me. And what it came down to, and I'll be honest, this last item here has come more clearly as I have been working and realize even asking these questions with the jobs I've actually held. So it's okay if you don't come to this really precise conclusion for your own interests discovery. But what really came down for me is I really enjoy teaching. I like writing and creating things. I like working with information, making information accessible, breaking things down. And I like working with data. It took me a really long time to figure this out. Like, this one's within the last 2 or 3 years. I like working with data more than working with people. Like, working with people in a teaching setting is fine, but like long-term consulting or something like that, I knew would not be for me. So those are some questions that I ended up asking myself, some of the conclusions I came to. And when it came to my job search, my first criteria was anything but clinical. I knew sitting like week 1, MNT, I was like, this is really cool stuff that I'm learning. I really like understanding it. I really like knowing that I could explain it to someone if someone asked me like, what does dialysis mean? But when it came to like my clinical rotations, thinking of myself working in a hospital, I was just like, if I absolutely have to put food on my table, I will. But I know that that is not where I find a lot of enjoyment. It is not where my main strengths are. And I knew I did not like excel in my own clinical rotations. And I put that there because some of you might feel similarly about some area of dietetics, and that is totally okay. You're going to experience everything in your internship and you're going to learn it all in your classes. And it is totally okay if you finished the internship, your semester, and you're like, that is the end of that. Like, I'll be completely honest. I have not calculated a TPN since summer 2007. because that's when my clinical rotation was. So for those of you that love clinical, I'm very excited for you. For those of you that have an area of dietetics that you're just like, when does this class end? I totally get it. So then I started applying for non-clinical positions. I had really liked my WIC rotation. I did a WIC rotation here at like the state level of WIC. I spent some time at the state WIC office and also some time in the like local level community offices. So, and I really enjoyed that. And then, so I thought it was really funny. I applied to a WIC position at a local level office, and they actually said I was overqualified. I think because I had a master's degree, which, I mean, we're not even to the master's degree requirement quite yet. We know it's coming. So to hear that a while ago, I was like, I literally have never had a full-time job. Like, I don't understand how I'm overqualified. And it was this really weird experience that I had. And it almost got me thinking, like, am I going to be qualified for any of the jobs do I like? Do I only like the easy things? I don't even know what that phrase really means because it totally just threw me off. So that was part of my job search. I really hope that doesn't happen to any of you because it becomes super confusing and frustrating. And then I applied for what became my first job, and then another state level WIC job that I was like, maybe I'll be qualified or appropriately qualified for that. And I put this offer while still interviewing because this is one of those things that, like, when I was in it, I was like, I literally don't know what to do. I don't know what the right protocol is. So I'm going to tell you guys what I did, and it worked out for me. So I interviewed for one position, and I knew I had an interview later that week for the other position I applied for. But like the day before the second job's interview, I was offered the first job. And so I asked them, I'm like, can I get back to you in like 2 days? Because I was like, I don't know which one I'm gonna like better. And I'm on these other people's calendar. Like, I've gotta follow through with that. So they were like, yeah. And which you can totally say, but I don't think they were expecting me to say that. So you can totally take time when you're given an offer. So then I'm sitting in the other interview, and I go through the interview, and towards the end, they're like, okay, we're gonna know, it was like a Thursday or a Friday or something. So they're like, okay, we're gonna know, we're doing some more interviews next week and we'll have some information. And I was just like, I can't make them wait another week to see if I get this one too. Cause I wasn't like, one is super more better than the other. I was just like, how do I be professional about this? So I asked them, I'm like, can you give me like a closer time frame so I know exactly what to expect? And thankfully, this interviewer was like, reading between the lines, do you have another offer on the table? And I was just like, yeah, I do. I told them I would get back to them like by the end of this week. And she was like, you know what, you take that job. And I mean, she didn't say that in a mean way, like, oh, thank goodness we don't have to tell this girl she's not chosen. But they were like, you've got a viable offer. We're still interviewing. And when they're still interviewing, they can't tell you where you are on their rank list or anything. So I was just like, oh my gosh, as a new person, like, thank you so much for basically telling me what to do. I didn't say it that way, but I was just like, okay, that like takes the burden off my shoulders. So that's why I put that there, because those are real life situations that if you're an anxious person like me, have you biting your nails like dawn to dusk. So went through the whole job search. Here's my job history. Starting in the bottom left corner, my first job out of school was working for child nutrition programs, as was mentioned in my intro. And child nutrition programs is school meals. So national school lunch program, school breakfast program, after school snack, there's a whole bunch of them. Also meals that are served in daycares if they choose to participate. So I was at the state level. And so I would go to districts throughout the state of Utah and just make sure they were meeting requirements. I would have to go watch them serve lunch. I would look at their menus, make sure that everything was on the up and up because there are requirements they had to meet for types of food being served, things like calorie levels. We'd have to make sure that students were taking the right kinds of food on their plate. Some of you guys might have been in school when there was a huge switch in the National School Lunch Program. It was back in like 2012, 2013-ish. Like they totally switched things. So I don't know if you guys have traumatic experiences about that for part of a school year, because it was pretty traumatizing for some people. But I mean, I was essentially like the IRS for school meals. We'd go and make sure they were just doing everything, look at all their records. They hated it when we came, even though we were always like super nice. From there, I moved to the Utah State University Dietetic Internship. And the connection between those two is that the emphasis of the USUDI is food service in schools, so food service management. So they needed someone who knew a little bit about what's going on in schools, because school meal service is different than hospital meal service or just random, you know, university cafeteria meal service. So that connection was super handy to have moving into that. And I will be completely honest, my technical position at Utah State University is clinical assistant professor. And I saw this job posting several times and I never applied, literally because of the word clinical. Not in a hospital at all. It's not clinically based at all. That's just the type of professor level it was. But really, I should have just clicked on it and read the whole description. I would have been more informed, but it kept coming. So finally I was like, I've seen this like 5 times. Maybe I should look at what it actually is. And thank goodness I did, because I worked there for 6 years. I was 3 years as a faculty member and 3 years as the program director. So Utah State, the internship there is a distance internship. So the faculty are all here in Salt Lake City, but we had interns all over the country. So every year there were 3 faculty members and we would split up our interns. And so I was over about 20 of them, just making sure they had success in their rotations, being their go-to, grading their assignments and that sort of thing. And then when I left Utah State University, I started Application Insider, because since I did a coordinated program, I had never, like, I knew the DPD plus internship was an option, but like I never went through that myself. I never applied to an internship. I didn't hear about DICAS until I started working for this internship. And starting out on that side of things, seeing applications that came in, being the one to answer some of the questions that came up, I was just like, this process is like, it's, I want to say ridiculous, but I'm like, I don't want to say that because I don't know how it came to be the way it is now. But for simplicity's sake, it's kind of ridiculous. There's a lot going on. And I just saw all these gaps. I mean, from questions that were coming into my program, from things that I saw in applications, I was just like, I don't understand why these things are happening, because it seems so clear to me that, you know, as a director, those things don't super matter. But then I would see on the applicant side, people are like losing sleep over this thing. And I was just like, it's not like A, B, or C. It doesn't really matter either way. So with Application Insider, I'm really trying to use my experience from that side of DICAS and D&D Digital to help students create applications, bridge those gaps, know that they've, you know, done everything that they need to, and that they've submitted an application that will stand out from the rest. So one of the questions I was asked was a day in the life. Application Insider is only like a year old, a year and a few months. So my experience as an entrepreneur, like that's what it is, but I'm a baby entrepreneur still. So I try to like split my week between behind the scenes tasks and things where I'm doing directly with clients, or my on camera days, even if I'm not actually on camera. So this is more like a summary of my week, kind of. My days are all really flexible, and I can work when I want. I usually end up working later into the night, just because I can. But so some of the things I do behind the scenes with Application Insider, the clients that I'm working with, I'm reviewing their applications or parts of their application, whatever sort of agreement that we've got for what they are looking for. I spend time creating new materials or tools or adjusting things, just making sure everything is updated and current. I do my best to research details about programs, because there's 5 billion programs out there, and before the only one I ever needed to know about was the one I was a director of. And now I'm learning about all these programs that I've never heard of before, and I'm like, oh, I need to kind of become more familiar. I don't need to know every single thing, but I need to be a little more familiar. My main like advertising medium is social media. So I plan and create social media content. And then I spend a lot of time just brainstorming and planning for the future, making sure, you know, if I want to have something ready by a certain time, what's, you know, plan backwards to get it ready by then, what's coming up that I want to have social media content for, what's coming up that I want to be advertising and just telling people about. So that's behind the scenes stuff. If I have like clients or on camera days like this, this also helps when I'm working at home. It's like, this is a day where you have to like legit get ready. On the other day, it's like work in your pajamas, it doesn't matter. But like even if I'm not on camera, I like to be like, I'm gonna have a phone call. I wanna be prepared and ready and like in the right mindset for that. So even if I'm just like recording a podcast that's just a solo podcast, I try to get ready that day. So things that are happening that day, podcast interview. I just started doing interviews with DI directors on my podcast. So that comes up. And then I do that, like I record the Zoom and save it as a YouTube video as well. So my face is definitely showing up there. If I do client calls, whether they are brainstorm calls, which are free, or if I'm connecting with clients that are paying to work with me. And I have a workshop that also has some live calls on it. If I'm recording any videos, I need to move this screen over. Recording videos or podcast episodes, like I said, even solo podcast episodes, I'll try to like get ready and just get that mindset. And then group webinars like this one, those are my on-client tasks. And I try to batch this stuff. So I'm like, okay, like today I knew I was doing stuff with you guys. This is the only official on-camera thing I had, but I was like, well, I got ready today and I'm kind of in a different mindset that if I'm just like, whatever, I can plan some social media posts or something. So I was actually working on, I wasn't recording videos, but I was editing some videos that are going to be a part of my Fancy booth at the member marketplace. So things like that, that's what I was doing today. So some keys to success. These are, I mean, I came to this from the point of an entrepreneur, but a lot of it is general keys to success anyway. So one of the things I've had to figure out is that I can figure things out. If you guys have ever heard of Marie Forleo, she's a big entrepreneurial person. She just wrote a book that's called Everything is Figure Outable, and I'm reading it and it's great. And it really does show you that if you're using the excuse of I don't know how to do that or I don't understand how to do that, then that's kind of a fake limitation you're putting on yourself. So everything is figure outable. You have to ask the questions, you have to use your resources, do the research, whatever that is. So that's a key to success, general success anywhere. Another thing I've had to kind of remind myself of is that dreams need plans. I'm really good, like I have a dog and so I walk him a couple times a day. And on my walks, that's when I'm always like, oh my gosh, it'd be so cool if I could do this. And then it's like, I write it down like, this is my dream that one day I'm gonna have. And then, you know, some time passes by and I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't done a darn thing for that dream. I guess I need to actually plan what the steps are to make that actually happen. And this question I have there, what can you actually do in one day and what can you actually do in 1 year? The concept is attributed, I believe, to Bill Gates, who said, like, people generally overestimate what they can do in a day, but they underestimate what they can do in a year. So part of that is just planning, you know, what are the steps that this grand plan requires? When am I going to work that into my timeline? How am I going to make that happen? And then I'm a pretty organized person anyway, but being the person that has to do everything at this point, hopefully that won't always be the case, but right now I am doing it all. This one's very more entrepreneur-y. Organization is necessary. Part of that is the planning process, but also just making sure that as you plan, you're using time efficiently, that you don't let things drop through the cracks. I have a lot of things running through my head like all of the time just because I'm afraid I'll forget them, and that's just how my brain keeps track of things. So that one, if you are thinking of being an entrepreneur, or some of you might already be on that path, you probably know that to some extent, that organization is really important. So what I wish everyone knew, I took this question as a dietitian, what are a few things I would tell people in general about eating? I'm the sort of person that I have a major sweet tooth. So whenever I'm at any place where food is being served, and then you have the chit chat like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? I'm always answering, I'm a dietitian while I'm holding a plate of like literally 7 desserts, because I'm like, yeah, I'll go have a salad, but like the cookies and brownies are calling my name. And so I just, I'm like, I always feel so weird answering that question, because it's never like, see this, like all these fresh vegetables I'm eating. I'm more like the cheesecake, the candy, the cookies, it's always on my plate. But that's just the kind of dietitian I am, and there's room for every dietitian in dietetics. So one thing that I wish everyone knew is that we don't need to sacrifice health to focus on weight. This is another phrase I have to attribute to, it's actually a podcast episode I was listening to recently, but I really like the way they said that. And I'm like, I feel like that's how my main approach is to health. I mean, I've never done one-on-one weight consulting, menu consulting, intake consulting, or anything like that, but that's always what people want to talk about when they find out you're a dietitian. And it's like, I really like that phrase. You don't need to sacrifice your health to focus on weight. There is so much more going on, and the scale tells a very short story. So I really like that phrase, and I want to be using it more to change the focus of things. And then this one, the second one, a balanced diet makes room for reality, because that's the other thing that people always ask is what diet is best. And I'm just like, we do not have time for this conversation. And there's honestly no right answer. And I'm like, and you can't ask me, because I'm the one eating 7 cookies, like literally in a row, and not caring one way or the other. So a balanced diet makes room for reality. A balanced diet allows me to do, my balanced diet allows me to do that. And maybe your balanced diet, you're not ready to throw in 7 cookies, but maybe you can throw in more or less than what you are now, depending on the person. So those are some phrases that I think are generally like applicable to the general public. You have my permission to use any of them if you want to. Some things I wish I'd known. I took this as like what I would tell my younger self as a student or an intern or even a young dietitian. You're not supposed to know everything, and it's impossible anyway. I would read so many applications that came into my program. This is free personal statement advice. Who would say that their weakness was they didn't have enough clinical experience. And I didn't like reading that, because it felt like the person was saying, my weakness in the dietetics field is that I'm not a dietitian yet. It's like, of course you're not a dietitian, you're literally applying to a dietetic internship. And they would have this expectation for themselves that they have, they memorize every single thing from their MNT class and they're never going to forget it. And that they are going to get in trouble if they show up at rotations and they don't remember the values that they're supposed to be looking at, or they're going to forget something that, comes up in a TPN calculation or whatever. It's always clinical. Clinical scares me, so that's why my examples are always from that. But you're not supposed to know everything. If you did, you wouldn't have to be in your classes. You wouldn't have to do an internship next. And we wouldn't have continuing education in the field of dietetics. So you're not supposed to know everything. Take that burden off yourself and make sure we skip over to the other side. You are supposed to learn. You're supposed to learn every day. You are supposed to learn from your preceptors, from your experiences, from your colleagues, from your classmates. And while you are learning, you are supposed to adapt to new information. You are supposed to try new things. You're definitely supposed to acknowledge your wins. Those don't get brushed under the rug just because you're supposed to know them. Acknowledge your wins and always, always grow from your failures. Is that what it says? Does it say grow? Okay. Always grow from your failures. Always, you're going to have both. You're going to have wins and you're going to have fails, and they both serve a purpose and they're both part of progress. So make sure you keep them in balance with each other. One of the questions was if I take virtual interns. At the time, I do not at this time. I would love to be able to take interns because that experience is so important. I know it's really useful for undergrads getting ready for that internship application, and then interns are obviously needing that experience to get ready for the dietetics field. So I really like that you have this question in here, and I'm like, I was a little cringy inside when I'm like, no, I don't, not yet, but I'm working on it. Part of it is I feel like I just need to get a better grasp on like organize things a little bit better, because it's not a good experience for an intern to come into something that the preceptor doesn't really know exactly what's going to happen. So I just need to kind of get that more in line before I will eventually have room for some interns. Here's my contact information for everything. That's my website at the top, my email, and then I am on Instagram at Application Insider. Happy to hear from any of you or accept a follow. I love follows. And thank you. This has been really cool. I'm totally happy to take questions. If you want to ask about me, my job history, or dietetic internship application stuff. And then let me just show these really quick since everyone's on mute. But I wanted to let you know, yeah, I'm going to send you this first thing that's listed here, 20 application tasks in 20 minutes or less. It's a PDF that you guys can use. So I'll send it to you if you can pass it out to forward it on to everybody. That's something that I've given out to webinars that I've done before, and I wanted to give you guys something that you can use immediately with this. And then these other 3 things that are listed, you can get them on my website. I think they're also all linked in this 20 applications list. But I've got an ultimate DICAS checklist you can use as you're working on your application, a DPD GPA calculator so you can know what that number is even before you put it into DICAS. And then I do hold free 20-minute brainstorm calls with people as you're working on your application. So those are some of the free things, really brief. I don't want this to become a commercial, but things you can also buy from Application Insider are tools and resources that you can use at your own pace, or you can work with me on part or all of your application. So back to questions. Ready for anything.
Thank you so much for watching. I feel like everyone can probably say that their road to RD has, their own unique turn and perspective to it. So I'm glad I could share mine with you. After I did this presentation to the students, I did hold a Q&A with them. So I was answering questions about why I was in dietetics, questions they had about their own application process and experience. So I will be sharing that in a future video. So hang tight and subscribe to the Application Insider channel so you don't miss it.